It's kind of hard to wrap your head around, but just a couple of years back, Sri Lanka's economy was in an absolute free fall. I mean, look at these numbers. In September 2022, inflation was soaring at nearly 70%. Fast forward to May 2025, it's negative. That's not just a comeback, it's one of the most stunning economic turnarounds we've seen in a long, long time. So how on earth did they do it? And more importantly, is it actually built to last?
All right, let's really get into it. We're going to unpack what everyone is calling the Sri Lanka model. We'll look at the pretty revolutionary financial tools they use to pull themselves back from the brink. But we're also going to be asking the tough questions. Is this a real sustainable blueprint for other countries in trouble? Or is it a super high-stakes gamble with a hidden cliff edge just around the corner? So first up, let's just lay out the official success story, right? The data that's coming out from both the Sri Lankan government and the IMF, well, it paints a picture of a nation that has definitely turned a corner since the absolute chaos of 2022.
What's really striking when you look at this is just how wide-ranging the recovery is. It's not just one metric looking good. We're talking strong GDP growth, the best they've seen since 2014. The currency, the rupee, has stabilized and actually gained value. Foreign reserves are back up. And maybe most critically, the government is running a primary surplus. That means they're taking in more than they spend before interest payments. And that right there is the bedrock of this whole plan.
And this chart, wow, it just says it all, doesn't it? On the left, you see the inflation rate, that terrifying spike back in 2022, and then this absolute nosedive into negative territory. Visually, that's the most powerful proof of their stabilization efforts. The crisis of runaway prices, for now, seems to be over. But look at the projection on the right. Inflation is expected to creep back up, and the big question is, can they keep it under control? So how did they pull this off? Well, it wasn't just your standard issue austerity plan. Sri Lanka, working with its creditors, basically invented two brand new types of government bonds, things that have never been tried before. Let's break down what they are. Okay, first up are these things called macro-linked bonds, or MLBs. The easiest way to think about them is as a kind of risk-sharing agreement. The idea is pretty simple, actually. If Sri Lanka's economy does really well, the folks who own the bonds get a bigger payout. But if the economy stumbles, the country automatically gets some debt relief. It's designed to make sure everyone is rooting for the same outcome. So how does this actually work in practice? Well, everything, and I mean everything, hangs on the country's economic performance during a 3-year window, from 2025 to 2027. That measurement period is going to lock in the final debt terms. If things go great, creditors get a bonus. If things go south, Sri Lanka gets a cushion. It's a symmetrical bet on the future.
Now, the second innovation is honestly even more radical: governance-linked bonds. This is a world first. For decades, people have talked about the G in ESG, governance, but it's always been this fuzzy, hard-to-measure concept. This bond changes all that. It makes good governance a financial imperative. It literally turns things like anti-corruption and transparency into a tradable asset.
And it's built around what you could call a financial ratchet. Here's how it works. If Sri Lanka hits very specific targets, like its revenue goals and maintaining fiscal transparency, the interest rate on these bonds automatically drops. We're talking a direct savings of about $80 to $100 million a year. That is a huge incentive for any future government to stick with the reforms.
So you've got this incredible turnaround, powered by some brilliant, first-of-its-kind financial innovation. It sounds like the perfect story, right? Maybe. Too perfect. And this is where we have to step in and ask the really hard questions. What if the very tools designed to save Sri Lanka actually contain the seeds of the next crisis? What happens if the recovery isn't just good, but too good?
And this is the absolute core of the counter-argument. It's not just us asking. Listen to what Brad Setter, one of the top experts on sovereign debt, has to say. He's arguing that the way these bonds are structured could paradoxically turn short-term success into a huge long-term problem. Let's dig into why.
The biggest risk in this entire model has a name, and you're going to want to remember it: the 2027 measurement cliff. And this isn't just one single problem, it's a perfect storm, a dangerous convergence of several pressures all hitting at the exact same time.
Okay, so this timeline really lays out the danger zone. From now until the end of 2027, Sri Lanka is kind of in this protected bubble. It's the measurement period for those new bonds, and they've got the full financial backing and oversight of the IMF. But then, boom, the end of 2027 hits, the IMF program ends, the training wheels come off, at the exact same moment that their debt repayments are scheduled to step up, meaning they increase significantly. And this right here is the mind-bending paradox at the heart of the whole deal. In the upside scenario, if Sri Lanka's economy booms during this protected 2025 to 2027 period, their total debt burden actually increases. The annual interest payments could incredibly end up being higher than the payments on the very bonds they defaulted on back in 2022. Just think about that for a second. A strong recovery could lock them into an unaffordable future. It's wild.
Now, to afford any of this, Sri Lanka has to walk this incredibly fine fiscal tightrope. The government has to maintain a primary surplus of at least 2.3% of GDP, starting in 2025 and going on for years. So the billion-dollar question is that politically sustainable? It means keeping taxes high and spending low year after year, which can really wear on a population. And if you want to see just how narrow that tightrope is, look at these numbers from the IMF itself. These are the absolute limits for what they consider sustainable. Now look at the projections. For its gross financing need, Sri Lanka is projected to be at 12.7%, just barely squeaking under the 13% ceiling. That is razor thin. There's basically zero room for error. A global recession, a spike in oil prices, almost any external shock could push them right over the edge.
So let's pull these two competing narratives together. On the one hand, you have this incredible story of a stunning recovery and world-first innovation. And on the other hand, you have a story of these massive hidden risks and a potential cliff edge. This isn't a simple success or failure story. It's a massive bet on sustained stability.
So for anyone watching this space, it all boils down to these three key variables. First, that GDP measurement. What happens if a shock hits right at the end of the measurement period? Second, the political will at home. Can the government really keep taxes that high without a major public backlash? And third, the external debt schedule. Can they handle that huge step up in payments right when the IMF lifeline disappears?
And this quote from Brad Setter just nails the central fear here. He warns that these innovative bonds, the very tools designed to create stability, could, under the wrong circumstances, become a volatility machine. They could end up amplifying risk at the exact moment the country is most vulnerable, potentially creating a new boom-bust cycle that leads right back to where they started.
And that leaves us with this final critical question. Is the Sri Lanka model a true blueprint that other nations can follow to innovate their way out of a crisis? Or have they accidentally built a new, more complicated, and maybe even more dangerous kind of trap? The answer is going to unfold over the next few years, and you can be sure the rest of the world will be watching very, very closely.